So we talk about in Dungeons and Dragons OOC, out of character knowledge. This idea that the character you're playing on the table, while it's controlled by you and influenced by you, I mean, it's literally your avatar on the table, what experience does it have and what knowledge does it have? A perfect example, and we tend to do this if we've been playing D&D for a while, if we're a veteran D&D player, even subconsciously. You kick down the door, it opens up into a large underground cave that the dungeon collapsed into, and there is a dragon there. Now, I never say it's a dragon. I explain what it looks like. So it's big, it's red, it's got lots of scales, it's speaking in an ancient language. You feel this wave of fear coming over you. It begins to lift up and move to attack. Roll for initiative. Now, in that moment, when I describe that, if you're new to D&D or you've never encountered a dragon before, and it can really be any monster, you're like, okay, well, it's big. It's probably going to breathe fire or do something like that. It's probably got magic. What's going on? Can I make some checks before combat begins? It's new. It's unknown. But if you've been playing D&D for a while as a player, you're like, okay, page 38 monster manual, great red dragon, 238 hit points, treasure type C, CR rating, whatever, 8, damage resistance 5, armor class -8 or armor class 25, plus 10 to hit. I mean, just, damage, 3d8 plus whatever, 3 attacks, tail attack, magical attack, spell uses per day, 3 breath weapons per day, evasion for half. Like, I'm pulling in lots of different D&D modules and D&D systems, but as a player, because you've faced it before. And the challenge here is, does your character really know that? I mean, you're a 5th level fighter. You've never encountered a dragon before. You've heard tales. You've heard stories. You wouldn't know all that. So there's this idea of out of character knowledge. And we do our best as players not to bring that over into the game and not to spoil that for new players. Now, sidebar, side quest, side note, as a DM, I'm aware of that in my game, so I'm constantly evolving. The classic example, I've posted this up to my D&D Monster Encounter channel here with the playlist. I had a roper. The characters were in a dungeon. They faced a roper. And the intelligence of the roper was such that it realized that adventurers would make their way through this passage for whatever reason, and they were pretty tasty. And some of the adventurers that wore funny hats and robes would use sticks that would cast fire and lightning and magic. So the roper realized that after it ate those humans and elves with funny hats, it could take those wands and, it didn't know it was wands, and use them in such a way. It observed it. It learned. So I had a roper, it's got 4 to 6 tentacles. I had a roper with 4 wands that was blasting the party. So when they come in and they see the roper, the players playing were like, okay, roper, page, that's R. So page 60 in the monster manual, armor class this, hit points this, treasure type this, number of attacks this. They know it. And it's like, it's casting lightning bolts at you, dude. It's shooting out like, hold person. It's doing sleep. It's doing this crazy stuff. And they're like, well, Fritz, you can't do that, man. It doesn't have magic. It doesn't have magical abilities. And, I can see this is like the thought process in their mind. They're like, Fritz, you can't do that. Ropers can't do that. It's like, well, no, the roper's not doing that, man. There's another reason. And then you make some skill checks. You look, and the rogue in the party's like, this roper is using wands. I'm not going to name any names. But the rogue in the party was like, okay, the roper's using wands, and I just crunched the numbers really quick. It has a wand of lightning bolt. And every time it uses it, we are losing, 62 gold pieces per charge. And this thing needs to be killed immediately because it's literally spending our treasure as we go. So being able to mix those things up. Now, this leads to the opposite side. So that was kind of the framework introduction. As a dungeon master, I do my best not to infect the monsters with out of character, out of DM knowledge. So when I play a monster on the table, or a group of monsters or an encounter, I first ask myself, what's the intelligence level and the wisdom level of this monster? That kind of synergy, that bookend, that combination. What would it understand? What would it know? And then I ask myself, based on the adventure, what in the narrative has this monster faced before? Has it known before? Has it dealt with magic users before? Is it aware of magic users? If we look at some orc marauders, they are aware of cleric powers. They are aware of magic. They utilize it. Now, it's going to be different based on their gods and their abilities, but they would be aware that, like, we don't like elves at all. And they also use magic, so we don't like that. They would be able to identify that, even if they don't understand the spells that are going to specifically be cast. They would know those elves can cast powers. So maybe the orc archers want to focus on the magic users, compared to, say, another monster set that's more of an animal instinct, where it's just going to lash out and bite whoever gets closest. So tactically, maybe if it's a carrion crawler, it's going to try and bite the fighter. It's going to try and bite the paladin. My monk, it's not getting anywhere close. I'm going to do the whole Fist of the North Star thing on it later. I'm going to try and sneak around to the side. But it doesn't know, carrion crawler doesn't know, like, I should focus on that wizard because I'm going to get hit with a lightning bolt. Like, it's literally intelligence, wisdom, experience fighting there. So I try to get behind that as opposed to infecting with my dungeon master knowledge to know, because I know the characters. I literally, know them. Their character sheets, everything, their tactica. I know the initiative order. I know what's coming next. From a high-up perspective as a DM, I don't want to look at that and say, okay, the carrion crawler, it's actually going to break and take that attack of opportunity, and then it's going to run forward and it's going to try and bite the elf to paralyze it. If I can do that, then I can turn my attention to the rogue, because it doesn't have the best armor class and it has the next least amount of hit points. So if I can eliminate those two, that shrinks down the initiative order. It gives me an advantage. Like, a carrion crawler would not be able to do that unless it was controlled by something, unless there was something in the narrative that I could do that. Now, I don't know. What's my intelligence? There used to be a test out there that, like, you could answer 50 questions back in the early day, and it would, like, map you to AD&D stats. And what was interesting in AD&D, D&D right now, like, everybody's godlike, everybody's rolling 18s. You level up, you're like, 25s and 30s with magic item bumps. I mean, I don't want to say it's out of control, but it's a little much, even for someone who might grump and say, well, Fritz, that's just AD&D you're talking about. But AD&D realized and recognized you were just an average person. You were an average hero, an average adventurer. So your stats, if you were fortunate enough, you roll it, you keep it. There's no point buy. You get what you get. If you rolled a 16, 17, 18, if you rolled a 15, that got you an experience boost. And that was huge. That was absolutely huge, which you begin to realize a wizard with 18 intelligence that could cast these 8th and 9th level spells, assuming you even make it there. You're talking a year or two of real time, AD&D, assuming you even make it there. That's a big, big deal. So in mapping this out and answering these questions, like, my intelligence was like 12. And I think my personality impulse, like wisdom, was like 10, because I just have like no impulse control on that. I mean, I'm aware, but just we're going to take those risks. We're going to roll the dice, chaotic, neutral, back in the day, all that type of stuff. But in exploring that, also realizing that, like, technically some of the monsters that I'm playing, they have higher intelligence than, they're like an AI. They're like super intelligent. They're even more intelligent than I can be. So the way I deal with that is, if we look at the intelligence of some of the greater dragons or some of the titans and giants, storm giants and things like that, really high intelligence. We're talking like in the 20s. So from that perspective, tactically, the way to map it is I do kind of step back super meta, and I do inject a little bit of my DM knowledge into it, where I'm intimately aware that this monster or this encounter might know certain things to manifest on the table, where I really step out, where I'm aware of what the characters have done in the past, and I pull that in. So there are times, I say that because there are times you want to cross that line or explore that line. But ultimately, as a DM, that out-of-character knowledge, OOC, or I should say OODM, out-of-DM knowledge, I try to be mindful of it. I try to keep the narrative where it is. And as always, as a dungeon master, we're looking to evolve. We're looking to experiment. We're looking to bring the very best that we can to our players, to our game, and to the tabletop.